The Grey Shadow female supporting actor who goes against the sky. Chapter 1 Crossing into Cannon Fodder. The night was like ink, and the moonlight rippled silver grey on the water. Sunili closed her eyes, and the next moment, there was a sharp pain in her brain, and the whole world turned upside down as if it had been swept up by a huge wave. When she opened her eyes again, what came into view was not her own room, but an antique fairy hall, and what was even more shocking was the face in the mirror, which was the cannon fodder female supporting character of the novel she had always looked down on, Yun Yaozheng. Yun Yaozheng was originally a genius disciple of the Tianzhuang sect, but in the story, he was deceived by the reborn heroine Yezidin because of the top immortal weapon Zixuan glass fan, and the senior brother Chen Ye who admired him was snatched away by Yezidin, and was finally thrown into the monster group and became the food of the ultimate devil. Sunili gritted her teeth, and 3 thoughts flashed through her mind: keep the immortal artifact, stay away from the male and female protagonists, and stay away from the boy who would eventually become the ultimate devil. She touched the Zixuan glass fan on her body, and the cold fan surface seemed to hide spirituality, emitting a faint light. She was secretly glad that she could do at least the first 2 things. However, she had just hid in Yun Yaosheng's attic, and was about to set up a formation to isolate outside interference when a figure suddenly appeared in the courtyard. It was a young man with deep eyebrows and eyes, a gloomy complexion, and a breath mixed with the power of humans and monsters, exuding a dangerous sense of loneliness. Yun Yaozheng. He called out his name coldly, his steps steady but as fast as a cheetah. Sunili's heart tightened. Isn't this the legendary boy who will eventually become the ultimate devil? She was about to teleport to avoid it, but she felt her shoulders sink and be grabbed by a huge force. Want to get rid of me now? It's late. The young man said in a low voice, an elusive light flashing in his eyes. Underscore 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 un. Chapter 2 The Inescapable Entanglement. Sunili was thrown abruptly onto the boy's shoulder, her body instantly stiffened in mid-air, and the Zixuan glass fan was held by the young man in his hand at will. What are you doing? She protested in a low voice, trembling in her tone. The young man didn't answer, just stared down at her. His eyes were like stars in the night sky, deep and cold. The air seemed to condense, and the surrounding clouds were distorted as if they were absorbed by him. Do you think you can hide? His voice was low, like the wind blowing through the cracks into the bone marrow, making people shudder. Sunili was shocked and understood that this young man was by no means an ordinary person. He is not a simple enemy, nor is he an easy monster to avoid. The most dangerous thing is that his strength is enough to tear through all her protection. At that moment, she suddenly remembered the ending in the novel. Yun Yaozheng was finally swallowed into the teenager's belly, refined and absorbed. Her heart sank suddenly, and countless escape plans flashed through her mind in an instant, but none of them worked. No. Impossibility. Sunili forcibly suppressed the fear in her heart, the fan in her hand vibrated gently, and the spiritual power of the hidden weapon trembled, as if she also sensed the crisis. The young man smiled, his voice so low that it was almost a whisper. Impossible? Do you think I will let you go? Underscore 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 un. Chapter 3 Entering the Demon Realm for the first time. He carried Sunili back to a hidden valley. The valley was filled with black mist, the air seemed to be distorted by demonic energy, the trees were withered and twisted, and the ground was full of crawling monsters. Here. This is the demon realm. Sunili exclaimed. The young man didn't answer, just put her on a boulder. His eyes swept over the black fog around him, deep and indifferent. However, the monsters had an unusual offer him, and even the most ferocious demon spiders lay low at his feet, buzzing. Sunili couldn't help but be surprised. It turned out that his power was not only terrifying, but also dominant. This force made her unable to resist easily, but at the same time, it also made her feel a sense of security for the first time. At least here, no one could hurt her at will. The young man suddenly stretched out his hand, his fingertips with a shimmering light, and gently touched her forehead. In an instant, a warm current poured into her body, erasing the fear in her heart and slightly weakening her defenses. This is spiritual power? Sunili was stunned. The boy lowered his head and said in a low voice, this is the only sense of security you have left in this world. Don't try to escape. She felt a vibration in her heart, but instinctively resisted, because she understood that all this meant that she could no longer move freely. Underscore 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 un. Chapter 4 The Youth and the Spiritual Fan. The days passed slowly in the demonic realm, and Sunili and the young man got along very delicately. The Zixuan glass fan became the only connection between the two, it was both Sunili's treasure and the boy's temptation. The young man occasionally reached out to hold the fan handle, and a thin smile flashed in his eyes. This fan originally belonged to you, but you also know that without me, you can't protect it at all. Sunili felt speechless. She wanted to keep the immortal artifact, stay away from the male and female protagonists, and stay away from the demons, but now, all three of her goals seemed to be ineffective. By accident, she touched an ancient runestone deep in the demon realm and suddenly activated a teleportation array from another world. She instinctively wanted to use it to escape, but the boy appeared in front of her, his eyes unfathomable. Do you really think you can go? Sunili was stunned for an instant, and the fan in her hand suddenly glowed, as if echoing her intentions. She understood that this was not an ordinary escape, but a game between the boy, the demon realm, and fate. Chapter 5 The Reversal of Destiny. Sunili began to understand that the only thing she could do was not to escape, but to take control of her own destiny. The purple mysterious glass fan was in her hand, gradually merging with her soul, and she felt an unprecedented power. She could fight against both monsters and the boy's control. However, the boy seemed to have foreseen all this, and his eyes had a faint smile. Do you think that if you master power, you can control me? Sunili's heart trembled, feeling that her relationship with him could no longer be simply defined. The identity of the former cannon fodder female supporting role has now become the deepest shackles and her only trump card. With a low roar coming from the black mist of the demon realm, the final battle quietly approached, not only between her and the monster, but also the fate between her and the boy. Sunili took a deep breath, clenched the Zixuan glass fan, and silently muttered in her heart, no matter what, if I want to live, I must go against the sky. Chapter 6 The Demon Realm Abyss. In the depths of the demon realm, there was a black wasteland shrouded in eternal night, with a faint fluorescence floating in the air, like countless imprisoned souls whispering. Sunili stood on the edge of the wasteland, holding the Zixuan glass fan in her hand, feeling that the spiritual power inside the fan was restless, as if reminding her that danger was approaching. The young man was still standing beside her, his eyebrows were deep, his eyes swept across the wasteland, and his voice was low and cold. Ahead is the abyss I have never dared to step into. If you want to escape, you can only go with me. Sunili's eyes widened, and a low roar was faintly heard from the abyss, like thousands of giant beasts roaring. She felt her shoulders tremble slightly, and the fan vibrated as if it were alive, as if she was sensing danger in sync with the boy. Here. What is hidden? She couldn't help but ask. The boy didn't answer, just stretched out his hand and squeezed her tightly, and in an instant, the two turned into a black shadow and stepped straight into the abyss. In the abyss, time seems to stop. Distorted phantoms emerged from the black mist, human but faceless, beast but silent. Sunili felt a wave of fear in her heart, but the light released by the Zixuan glass fan in her hand penetrated the fog like a filament, guiding her forward. Don't be afraid. The young man's voice was close to his ears, but it seemed to come from thousands of miles away, low and irresistible. She clutched the handle of the fan, took a deep breath, and decided to live no matter what, even to challenge this unknown darkness. Chapter 7 The Phantom Beast. Just as the two of them were passing through the fog, a huge black shadow rushed out from the depths of the abyss. Its body was like a mountain, its mouth was dripping with black liquid, and its eyes flashed with red light. This is the beast of the demonic realm? Sunili exclaimed in her heart. The young man instantly pulled out his long sword, and the sword body flashed with dark purple light, pointing directly at the magical beast. The magical beast roared, and the power fluctuations caused the surrounding fog to churn violently, and the ground cracked. Sunili knew that her strength alone could not be confronted head-on. She clenched the purple mysterious glass fan and infused spiritual power into it, and the light on the fan surface exploded, forming a silver whirlwind that shook the demonic beast back. The young man frowned slightly, stretched out his hand, and the black mist instantly condensed into countless sharp blades, tearing them away at the demonic beast. The magical beast howled in pain, but still did not retreat. Its size became larger and larger, and there was uncontrollable anger in its eyes. This magical beast. Not just a monster, it seems to manipulated. The young man said in a low voice, a hint of strangeness flashed in his eyes. Sunili's heart tightened. She understood that the hidden power in this abyss of the demon realm was far more complex and dangerous than she had imagined. Chapter 8 The Awakening of the Spiritual Fan. In the whirlwind, Sunili felt an unprecedented spiritual power pouring into her body, and the depths of her soul were like ignited flames, merging with the fan. This is the true power of the spirit fan? She muttered to herself. The boy noticed her change and his eyes moved slightly. You have finally awakened. As the spiritual power awakened, the fan emitted a strange light and turned into countless light blades, which intertwined with the boy's sword light, instantly beheading the monster into the crack of the abyss, and disappeared silently. Sunili gasped, feeling unprecedentedly powerful, and at the same time understood that this force could not only protect herself, but also be enough to influence the situation of the entire demon realm. The young man smiled slightly, and for the first time, his eyes were no longer indifferent. You. Not only my destiny, but also an extension of my strength. Sunili's heart trembled slightly, and she realized that her fate with the boy had been tightly tied and could not be separated. Chapter 9 Fate is entangled. After the trial of the demon realm abyss, the relationship between Sunili and the boy became more and more delicate. She gradually understood that his loneliness and paranoia stemmed not only from his own alien identity, but also from endless suspicion and pain about the world. One night, when the black mist was like smoke, he took her in his arms and said softly, "From the moment you appeared in front of me, I knew that no matter what, I would not let you go." Sunili raised her head and looked at the bottomless emotions in his eyes, feeling both fearful and irresistible. She originally wanted to escape from this teenager and this demonic realm, but found that escaping would only lead her to deeper loneliness. She clenched the Zixuan glass fan and said softly, "Maybe. Destiny is not entirely in my control, but at least, I can choose how to face it." The boy lowered his head and touched her forehead, "Then stay by my side and become my strength and my only." Sunili's heart trembled, and she understood that from now on, she is no longer just a cannon fodder female supporting role, but a new chapter of destiny written with the teenager. Chapter 10 The Depths of the Black Mist. In the black mist of the abyss, a low laughter came, as if coming from the depths of hell. Sunili and the boy stood side by side, facing an unknown crisis. "The ultimate enemy has already sensed our existence," the young man said in a low voice, the tip of the sword flashing with a dark light. Sunili's heart fell, and the Zixuan glass fan emitted an unprecedented light, as if answering her wishes. Whether it was a monster or fate, she was no longer afraid. The boy reached out and held her hand and whispered, "No matter how treacherous the road ahead is, remember, my embrace will always be your only harbor." Sunili looked up, looked into the depths of the black mist, and smiled slightly. "Then, next, it will be up to me to go against the sky with you." The black mist rolled, and the door of the abyss quietly opened. The giant wheel of fate has begun a new turn, and this time, the grey shadow female supporting role is no longer just a supporting role. Chapter 11 Demon Realm Storm. In the abyss of the demon realm, the black mist stirred like a living creature, rolling up fierce winds and lightning. Sunili and the young man stood side by side, the light of the purple mysterious glass fan and the dark purple long sword intertwined, forming a barrier of light to resist the violent demonic energy. The enemy this time. More terrifying than any magical beast ever. The young man's brows furrowed, and the cold light flashed in his eyes. "Then let's work together." Sunili clenched the handle of the fan, and her spiritual power surged in her body. A huge black shadow rushed out from the depths of the abyss, pressing down like a black mountain. Its shape was constantly changing, and every roar was like heaven and earth collapsing. Sunili felt the resonance between the purple Xian glass fan in her soul, and the light expanded violently, forming a silver-white ball of light, instantly shaking the monster away. The young man stretched out his sword, and the sword light penetrated the black fog like a meteor, hitting the monster's heart directly. The monster wailed, but in the next moment, it turned into countless black tentacles, enveloping the two of them. "Don't panic!" Sunili roared. She rotated the fan into a giant fan shield, the light hitting the black mist like a sea tide, repelling the tentacles, and fighting back with the boy. In this battle, the two cooperated tacitly to form a sky-breaking momentum. The black mist rolled in the light and finally dissipated with a loud bang, and the abyss temporarily returned to calm. Chapter 12 The Past of the Boy. After the battle, the young man held Sunili in his arms, and in the dark night, he let go of his indifference for the first time and said in a soft tone, "Actually, I was never really trusted." Sunili raised her head slightly and looked at the loneliness in his eyes that could not be concealed. "So you have always wanted to protect yourself and control everything." The young man nodded and took a deep breath. "That's right. I didn't find out until you showed up. It turns out that relying on others can also be a kind of strength. Sunili's heart was slightly shocked. She understood that the reason why the young man was paranoid and indifferent stemmed from the rejection of him by the whole world. But this loneliness also made him have an inseparable obsession with her. So, I won't run away, Sunili said in a low voice. She stretched out her hand to the boy's face, her eyes flashing with determination. The young man's eyes moved slightly. He slowly lowered his head, and touched her forehead. Okay, then let's go down together. Underscore 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 un. Chapter 13 The Fate Showdown. Beyond the abyss, the black mist of the demon realm began to spread, and finally the enemy appeared. That was the master of the entire demon realm, an ancient dark being with power enough to tear apart heaven and earth. Finally, the real challenge is here, the young man said in a low voice, clenching his long sword. Sunili stood beside him with a fan, her light shining like the morning light, in sharp contrast to the black mist of the dark existence. During the battle, the boy worked closely with her. The young sword light broke through the sky, while the Sunili spirit fan guided the light energy to form a barrier and constantly counterattacked. The demon realm lord roared, and the black mist turned into 1,000 hands and 100 eyes to attack the two of them, but under the light of the purple mysterious glass fan, the black mist began to twist and break. In the end, Sunili poured the spiritual power of her whole body into the Zixuan glass fan, and the light on the fan surface burst out with a dazzling silver-white light, converging with the young man's sword light to form a divine light that could penetrate heaven and earth. The black mist and the demon realm master disintegrated at the same time, and the world returned to peace. Underscore 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 un. Chapter 14 Go Against the Sky. After the war, the demon realm returned to tranquility, and Sunili stood in the light, holding the Zixuan glass fan in her hand, feeling the completeness and strength of her soul. The boy stood beside her, with a real smile on his face for the first time. You are no longer cannon fodder female supporting actors, but one of the masters of this world. Sunili looked at him and smiled slightly. From now on, our fate will no longer be decided by others. The young man stretched out his hand and held her hand, his eyes shining with affection and firmness. No matter how sinister the road ahead, my embrace will always be your harbor. The figures of the two stood side by side in the morning light, and the Zixuan glass fan and the long sword complemented each other, becoming the most dazzling light between heaven and earth. Underscore 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 un. Postscript: The Grey Shadow female supporting actors counterattack. Sunili's experience of becoming a cannon fodder female supporting role was originally just a joke of fate. With her wisdom and courage, she mastered the fate of the character who was originally destined to fail and went against the sky. The boy was originally paranoid and lonely, but because of her appearance, he learned to trust and rely on, and the two eventually became each other's harbor and strength. The Zixuan glass fan is not only an immortal weapon, but also a part of her soul, symbolizing that even if the world is filled with darkness, it can change its destiny with light. From cannon fodder to the ruler of heaven, Sunili's story tells us, no matter how cruel the fate is, as long as you bravely control your own power, light and hope will always belong to you.